You ready to rock, Mike?
Let's do it. So first off, thank you everyone for joining us. We know you all have busy lives, but from this research we've done, this is clearly a pressing topic for everyone. So as you may know, we ran a survey asking therapists leaving care, why are they leaving care? And far and away, the number one answer was 85% are leaving care because of lack of growth opportunities in the practices they currently work at. And at Prompt, we are really passionate about solving that. It affects everyone, including us. And we wanted to put together a roundtable of leaders that have great cultures we've gotten to know over the years. So, for some quick introductions, Nick Weber is the CEO of Team Rehab. They're in about 100 clinics, over 100 clinics across 5 states, primarily in the Midwest. Josh Funk is the CEO of Rehab to Perform, who, Josh, I think yesterday was Clinic 11. 11 clinics in the DC area. And last but not least, Michelle Collie, who is the CEO of Highbar Physical Therapy, and they have about 20 plus clinics in Rhode Island. We're also joined by Emma Brady and Emily Kelly, who founded the Clinical Transition Group, where we pulled this report from. And they also happen to both work at Prompt. For this conversation, we want it to be conversational, informative. And as we go, if there's any questions you want to ask, please hit the Q&A button in the bottom of the screen, and we will do our absolute best to answer them. So to kick off the conversation, Michelle, I'm going to pick on you. How do you approach keeping your therapist motivated and excited at Highbar?
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Mike, and also thanks to the team at Prompt. I think analyzing and asking the right questions and gathering data so we can support the future of our industry is essential, because it really is easy to get stuck into the weeds and the challenges that we all face in practices, especially with the challenges in payment. And so understanding why so many folks are leaving, and an element underlying there is some financial components, but really what it comes down to is the opportunities for growth and development. I think you need to stand back and have a really holistic and a strategic approach to that, understanding what your culture is. So for us, I believe it very much is about having that team approach, listening to your people to understand what are the kinds of opportunities people are looking for. Then you have the ability to create professional development pathways, leadership opportunities, learning opportunities, community involvement, DEI initiatives, whatever it is, to actually ensure that your physical therapists or your assistants are more than just a PT. They can be a PT and a mentor, a PT and a faculty member, a PT and an advocate. So again, to create those opportunities for ongoing growth and development. But really that team approach, listening, a variety of options, giving people choices, and then finally celebrating people, making sure you create joy and actually rewarding and celebrating. And it doesn't just need to be financial, but really highlighting the good work that people are doing, because PTs by nature want to do good work. They're good people, and they want to receive credit for the good work that they're doing. So as leaders, it's important to develop cultures that revolve around that.
Michelle, do you give everyone the choices up front when they start, or are those people that you identify as people that are well suited for a growth opportunity, or is that given to everyone?
It's given to everyone. And I think that that's what we've tried to evolve with. And if I go way, way back in time, when our practice started, we were one clinic. And even the founding sort of principles of growth were like, how do we create opportunities for folks so they don't need to leave this practice? And so it's very early on getting to know that individual. Do they want to be a clinic director? Then create the opportunities for that. Do they want to be a specialist in pediatrics and have a side hustle? Then develop that. Because to me, failure was always when a clinician left because there was an opportunity somewhere else. that I actually could have created for them. So I think it's a very individual, making sure you really listening to every clinician that begins with you.
Great, Nick. Same
Yeah,
question.
I think everything Michelle said resonates quite well, and I think the way we look at it is, we want to hire the absolute best people. We've worked hard to build a culture inside a clinic, and in each clinic is a little bit different. So we want to hire the absolute best people who are motivated by the things that are important to us, which is taking great care of people, both taking great care of our staff as a teammate and a good worker, but also, and most importantly, like being empathetic towards the patients that we see. We all got in this to help people, and my role as a therapist to a clinic owner or an executive has always been the same. Just take care of people. I'm just doing so on a larger scale, and that has to be reflected from the top of the organization all the way through. And upon entry into the organization, it's got to be stressed that we're here for people and we want to make sure that that's our primary focus. As far as like motivating the individual therapist and growth opportunities, it's got to be a personal conversation. And each person may or may not know what they want to do, and both are okay answers. What our job is as employers and certainly as mentors to these employees is to make sure we get to the bottom of what they want to do, whatever that is. And if they don't know, let's give them some structure and some options and allow them the course to pivot. So what Team did is made sure that as we listened to these conversations and we got our requests and built our data pool of what people wanted, we either created or hosted advancement opportunities and educational opportunities for advancement for these people to make sure that they're feeling that they're being pushed, that they're not just being pushed, but they're going towards their goals. All the while, if you're, like Michelle said, your culture's good and you're all working towards the same thing because you're high performers, it's important to make sure that people feel that sense of belonging and that sense of ownership, whether it's literal ownership in the clinic or ownership of some part of the day, creating schedules, choosing the next social outing, being the one to write the nice NPS feedback on the whiteboard, give some of that ownership to people so they really feel like they belong. And then you have to recognize the good work that they do when it's done and celebrate those things, the big ones and the small ones.
Nick, you mentioned compensation there. Ownership in the actual clinic. Do you mean by that?
Yeah, at Team, our model is it's a partnered model. So, clinic directors own a third of their clinic. Buy-in can happen for tenured employees as a reward of saying, hey, we value you as an employee. We want you to stay. Your hard work is, directly responsible for, the success of this clinic. And then we have the ability for therapists and other key performers in the clinic, like a front office person that we call a PAC, to buy in 1%, and then they can own part of the clinic they work in, and they truly can belong at that point. There's other incentives too, monetary or otherwise. We want people to be rewarded for what they do, whether it's sharing in monthly profits or staying a little bit later to see a patient or two, a productivity bump or bonus, and then the collective bonus where we have all the aspects of the clinic working together towards a common goal. And if they hit the targets, everybody in the clinic gets rewarded with the bonus. Sometimes that clinic isn't profitable yet, but they're working on the right things that teach the skills to be successful. So we want to teach that teamwork and share in that reward all the way throughout the clinic.
That's great. Josh, do you mind taking the same question?
Yeah, I think I'm left wondering a little bit more about Nick's structure. I mean, obviously he's further along than we are as it relates to partner and LLC and operating agreements and some of the paperwork. But for us, we have profit sharing for leadership at offices. I'm not sure if that is specifically what he's communicating, but for individuals who want to help us open a clinic, they have to be good at three things. They've got to build, themselves, build the service that we have. They have to be able to lead themselves, lead others. and then sell themselves and sell the company. So we are always talking about build, lead, sell. If you have people that are those triple threats, usually they get identified early on and they're communicating to us that they would like to open an office. If they don't quite have those skills, and regardless of whether or not they do or not, we now have, in addition to internal soft and hard skill training from a clinical side, we have an internal leadership program. And then we're working on building out more of our internal sales structure for those individuals to obviously put them in a position to be successful. But what we're finding more and more is individuals are strapped with debt. There's no secret that the costs around them are going up more and more, and trying to find ways to pair them with the community of which they grew up in. When we open up locations, a lot of times it's opening up in areas where people have, some kind of history. So, the latest office that we're opening, we have an individual that grew up 15 minutes down the road that knows that community very, very well. She wants to go back to that area, call it home. And another individual of which they're going to be doing a co-leadership role that lives just south of it. So, we're trying to make things easy for people. We're trying to decrease friction as it relates to work-life decisions. Knowing that it's also easier for them to probably operate and open a clinic that they're not having to drive 30, 45, 60 minutes to, knowing that this generation is talking about work life all the time. But, it is something that we're still more in our infancy with. But outside of opening a clinic, we do have individuals who have entrepreneurial roles, potentially surrounding a program or a service, of which almost becomes a side hustle for them. Where they're overseeing a department, let's call it pregnancy or postpartum care, concussion rehab. We've got a force deck program coming out, running analysis, things that they take ownership over as an entrepreneur, but underneath, obviously, our entrepreneurial umbrella. They use our ecosystem, they use the resources of the company to pour into a passion project and ideally increase their earning potential.
You mentioned, I think earlier, that they're coming to you with that. Like one of that affects everyone is silent quitting, and then someone going out on their own and doing their own thing. How did you structure it where people are coming to you and saying, hey, I want to spearhead my concussion program here? Like, is that just from culture day one of when the therapist is onboarded or the employee is onboarded?
Not only with the therapist is onboarded, but we also have this communicated in our DPT student onboarding materials, the opportunities that are present here. So we're trying to create these conversations earlier and earlier and earlier, where we have people who start day one and they already know that this is an option for them, and they're trying to fast track their career. They know the value that they're going to bring to the company. They want to know exactly what the company is going to provide for them. And they're doing a really, really good job of shopping around and making sure that certain things are working out in their favor with regards to short-term career. We have an individual that helped us open our 9th office that was not even 2 years out, but he came in, crushed it. We have a culture champion award called our Green Team Award. He did great from a clinical standpoint. He's doing great from a leadership standpoint where his peers recognized him. And he was somebody that was regularly out doing a good job of on the sales side. So it made it easy for him to come in as he did and make the impact that he had opening up an office where, some people might come in, not have an idea of what exactly they're looking for out of their career, not have an idea of what the company's exactly going to provide for them, kind of meander through a 90-day onboarding first year with the company. And it may take them a much greater amount of time to actually get connected to something that appeals to their long-term goals. So I think the earlier and earlier we're having those conversations, it's better for us from an attraction standpoint where you're building out your pipeline to your team. But it's also better for the individuals. There's less uncertainty. There's more awareness. They get to move forward with a lot of clarity in the decision making. Hey, I'm moving here. I'm opening a clinic here. I'm buying a house here. And they're able to probably put themselves in a position where other individuals in their life, potentially a spouse or kids, are a lot more settled.
Michelle, you had your hand up before you got kicked off.
I know. I don't know what happened there. Some IT glitch. I actually heard you ask the question twice, Mike, like, how do you identify these folks? And Josh, I think, did a really great way of bringing up a point that someone told me once is like show, don't tell. So when you have a culture where you're actually telling the stories and showing, whether it's students or new employees, like this is how this director got to this position. This is their pathway. Like if you really show it in the behaviors rather than just telling people we have all these opportunities, I think is a good message, because you so often hear people saying, we do this, we promise this, we do that. But I think people are getting much more aware of what they can actually see and experience. So if you want to motivate it and get your therapists and your staff excited, don't tell them about all your offerings. Like show them, hey, I've got this clinic director, Rob Dwyer. He was a student with us. He wanted to become a champion at dry needling. Now he hosts our 2-day courses, level 1 and level 2. He's also the clinic director. Like tell the story, show the story so that your clinicians can be motivated and excited by what they see around them.
And Josh, you're shouting that out publicly, right? You mentioned an award of some type.
Yes. So we have a Green Team Award. We paired up with a company called Lead 'em Up, and they do quarterly touch points with our team, virtually, semi-annually, in person, and then we actually have an asynchronous leadership module, which ideally helps build them to be leaders in the company. So that is something we are communicating to people. They have to earn into that. If they don't do a good job on the clinical side, they don't get to earn their way into the leadership side. If they do a good job of service and leadership, they do a good, then they have the potential to help us open up a clinic if they want to. But it's that build, lead, sell, trying to put them in a position where, let's be honest, if they do this for the company, this is a benefit to the company as well. So this is all about us making sure that we're transparent about what this mutual relationship could look like moving forward, and ideally communicating to them in a way that's appealing to them how much we are going to support them through that process.
And throughout that process, for I guess you guys to in general gauge success, like is there objective data points you look at, but there also has to be soft skills that you're monitoring as well for that. I guess KPIs are easier to go around, but is there soft skills that you guys look at to identify these folks? I guess question to the group.
This is something I guess I'll just chime in real quick, but we have a quarterly survey goes out, and they nominate these individuals. So it allows me to not have as much trouble kind of going through direct feedback from site directors when one person pops up at an office, they're brand new to that office, and every single person for that office is nominating this person for our Green Team Award. We also have, for anybody that uses Slack out there, we have High Five Friday. So High Five Friday is micro dosing our culture champions or our best teammate awards. So when I see individuals regularly popping up that another individual has noticed them standing above or standing out with regards to something that they did throughout the course of the week, those are also some things that become a lot more apparent. And us recognizing in those instances nothing KPI oriented. It's entirely looking at an individual, the traits that we decided that we value as a company. It could be something that aligns with core values. It could be something that they did that was discretionary, that was outside of what is considered typical and standard. And that gives us a better idea of an individual who might be standing apart as a leader at that particular office. I mean, especially in a situation where you keep getting bigger and, it's harder and harder to get those touch points directly myself.
Nick.
I think that Josh's points are super valid, and that goes back to you have to recognize not just a clinical outcome or a KPI, but these little things that feed into the culture and support and prop up the values. And the High Five Friday is a great idea. The champion stuff, it's all really good. And one of the ways we embrace that at Team is, we have a team MVP where somebody can nominate someone within their department, within their clinic, for doing everything from, walking a patient out to the car with an umbrella to, turning a donation box into the clinic because they heard about a tragedy from one of their patients, or just made somebody's day. It's all those little wins that go a long way. And I think it's twofold. One, Josh mentioned, recognizing it in bigger or smaller doses, which is phenomenal, but also the people who take the time to recognize that is really important, because it's so easy for us in leadership to hear only the bad noise, and we want to hear so much more of the good things that go on, because it completely dominates our day. There's so much good going in and around us, and it's important to make sure you pause and focus on that, and really try to put that other spin into a different conversation when it's important.
Right. Sorry, Emily, I missed your hands was up.
It's okay. It's okay. I just wanted to call out a trend that I'm noticing with what Nick is saying and what Josh is saying and what Michelle is saying just from the very beginning. And that is that you all created a culture and a psychological safety to have these discussions with people. And so there's a lot of owners out there that might not have all these programs built out yet. But for a clinician, they might be very nervous to come up to their owner and say, hey, I want to do something else that's going to have a big and broad impact on the clinic that could help everybody. So just, you might lay out that conversation for your team first to give that, like that permission giving, so you can kind of catch those people who might be itching to try, something hybrid or something a little bit different from the traditional patient care approach.
Yeah, I can add to that, Emily. I think you make a great point, and I do believe too the underlying culture is about your expectations for how people are behaving. And I think for all of our organizations, we've got organizations where we want to listen and we want to ask the right questions and we want people to be best versions of themselves. And I'm sure it's very challenging if you're a clinician who's in an organization that might want to have that culture. They just haven't figured out how to create it, because there's still a lot of strategy and processes and structure that needs to go in to figuring out, especially as you grow, how do you ensure that you take that culture that you have in a single clinic, but how do you ensure that it stays as your company grows? How do you make sure that the clinic leaders understand the value of feedback and those one-on-ones? And I think, to bounce off Mike's points when he brought up KPIs, it is important to look at the data, because it gives credibility ultimately, and how having one-on-ones and how getting feedback and how engagement isn't just about saying, woohoo, I love working here. It's actually just participating in a survey as well. How all of those actually measures actually have an ultimate impact on not just the financial success of a practice, but also the kind of care that's given and its opportunity to grow. So I think that's where this blend of looking at the right measures, the right strategy, and the right behaviors, that they actually are all related, but you do need to pause, as Nick mentioned, to stand back and think, what are the right processes? I hear, Josh, I love your Fridays, and in your organization that works great. And for us, we've done other things. We have an awards, annually, and for all these different awards, and we do it virtually. We used to do it in person. We have other, employee of the month. But as your organization evolves, and not just based on size, but I think based on the evolving generations and what they expect, you'll have to change how you provide feedback or how you recognize or how that is. It's, I'm old, I'm 52, and how we celebrated and how we worked and what motivated myself when I was 27 is very different to the current generation, which is great. And so again, every few years, continually listening to that next generation and evolving the way that you're giving feedback and rewarding and recognizing people. This isn't just a set it and forget it. It takes ongoing work and looking at the actual impact of the initiatives and the behaviors that you have in place.
I guess I'm a millennial, Michelle. What do you notice?
I love millennials. I actually think it's great. I actually think it's one of the most enjoyable and fascinating things about my job is actually getting the chance to listen to people in each of the different generations. So I actually think it's really fun and fascinating. And it has helped us evolve our organization because, again, I'm not here to create an organization that attracts and retains 52-year-old physical therapists. That is not a good business model. I am here to make sure we've got an evolving practice that supports the next generation of clinicians who can practice at the top of our license and take our profession to the next level. So I got to listen to people like you and everyone else.
What are you noticing of like what people used to care about versus now? Like if you were to name one or two things that you're seeing in the new generation of people coming up.
I mean, obviously the work-life balance, and that's really important. I think that what I'm seeing in the next generation is people are, very aware of, WIFM is a word, what's in it for me, which they should be, like very aware of how do I be the best version of myself. That means I can't work till 8 o'clock on a Friday night. I do need to go and spend time with family or go to the beach or do whatever. So a significant increase awareness of that, because in my day, yeah, you just worked your ass off and that's just what you did. And everyone did, and it was great. So there's that, but yet people still want to actually have an underlying sense of purpose and be part of something bigger. So I'm seeing this kind of mix, like, yeah, purpose is really important, but at the same time, being super careful about my own journey and that I can, evolve and grow in the best version of myself. I didn't feel a sense of purpose when I was in my 20s. I was like, the harder you work, the luckier you get, study, go on courses in the weekends, like work, and I loved it. So I didn't have that, there wasn't the purpose side there that I believe is there now.
I think everyone's kind of brought up some great points on, it starts with like creating a culture of positive feedback. Like when we look at the NPS data of therapists, like it's mostly like plus 80, plus 90. So the overwhelming majority of the feedback is positive, but like Nick, you said, I think people tend to skew on the negative side. And we did a leadership training at Prompt where this company told us that people need to hear 5 times as much positive feedback as negative feedback to think that they're getting overall positive feedback. So I think that's a great, one easy takeaway is like create a culture where whether it's a Friday, every Friday people give positive feedback, or it's, whatever cadence works, but creating a culture that like encourages each team member to give that feedback about others is a simple, easy way to kind of start pivoting the mindset of the practice to be skewing more positive, because it really is like, I mean, I go to PT all the time and my wife does, and Mike's a chronic PT patient. Like the experience is overall positive, but it's so easy to skew on the negative.
Adam, I think piggybacking on that, I always think of the word ecosystem. You have to have an ecosystem-based approach to patient care. You have to have an ecosystem-based approach to caring for your team. And I think, you should be asking yourself on a regular basis for your team, if you're creating micro wins, macro wins, we're talking about weekly, monthly, quarterly touch points, kind of like Michelle pointed out, like we have a big annual award show. It kind of takes the ESPYs, for anybody who's familiar with ESPN, and we have the R2Ps every year. We make it a big deal. Last year's theme was, the 80s. And granted, 80% of our team, 80 members of our team are 38 or younger, and maybe that works a little bit well for the millennial and Gen Z side of things. But regardless, you're trying to come up with the best ecosystem for the individuals that are with you and that you're trying to attract. I also think it's very important, and we talk a lot about NPS for team, and in Prompt, it's for patient care and your facility. But are you asking NPS of your team? Are you asking your team how likely they are to refer a family or friend member to work for you? So that's something that we do on a quarterly interval. And then once a year, we're asking about workplace happiness and work-life balance as a part of our 360 survey. I'm not big on performance surveys personally, just because I think they're largely one-way conversations. I'm a big believer in a 360 survey. It's tremendous. They rate themselves, they rate the company, and they rate their peers. But that's a great opportunity where you're getting more and more information about their subjective experience and the experience that they have around with their leaders. Because in that survey, we ask them to rate the leadership at their location or their direct reports. So hopefully that's something that's beneficial, thinking ecosystem approach, but also measuring some of these things that we're talking about and actually putting a data point to some of these buzzwords that do seem more subjective in nature.
Yeah, it's awesome. Super helpful. We have a couple questions from the audience, so I'm going to kind of drive them and then we'll see where we'll go from there. But one of the questions was from a current orthopedic PT who's working as a staff therapist and is seeking opportunities to grow earnings potential, and asked, what are some ways that you can increase as a therapist the knowledge base on the sales side, both from convincing patients to buy into their plan of care and also the business development standpoint? And how can a therapist that's looking to grow their sales skills? Emma, maybe you could actually start on taking that question, since you've done that quite a bit. I don't have your audio, Emma.
You're just on mute.
Yeah, this is definitely a passion of mine that I don't want to take up the whole webinar about, but yeah, there's lots of resources. If you go to my LinkedIn, I have an article on sort of my favorite salespeople and how to apply that to the therapy world. It's, the number one indicator of patient satisfaction is the medical staff's attitude. So we've already said how great therapists are. So as long as you're having a great attitude, you're already a great salesperson.
I think that a quote that I got early on from a course was, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And caring is the easiest thing you can do as a therapist. And it is the most essential thing that you have to have as a leader as well. So as a therapist, and I hate to say it, a young therapist in your career, being a great therapist, certainly by listening and caring, that is what's going to get your name recognized. That's what's going to start filling your schedule. It's going to go from, no return patients to all of a sudden half the patients on your schedule are either return patients or word of mouth or whatever. The only way you get there is by demonstrating that you care. And then what that then leads into, and this is where you have to have your radar open a little bit, and you need a mentor like a Michelle or a Josh to kind of clue you into this, is now a physician might keep popping up on your radar, and you need to have an opportunity to have a conversation with them about it. Preferably not the oops conversation, preferably like, hey, Mrs. Smith said I should, reach out. But if that's not your bag, and you've got the caring and the listening down, and you really want to focus on your clinical excellence, your schedule will fill up through your excellence as well. So you've got a kind of bifurcated path to learning how to sell. And it can be in your face sell or direct relationship building, which is at the key of any sell, or just based on your excellence is what's going to help you sell. But you got to find what works for you, and you need a mentor to kind of give you some outside feedback on how to do that, for sure.
Before going to Michelle, I read a book by Dale Carnegie, like How to Win Friends and Influence People. I really recommend reading that. It's like people remember how you make them feel, not necessarily what you say or do. It's the main takeaway of the book. Sorry, Michelle.
No, I love that, and it's a great book, and it is how you make people feel. I also like to remind therapists, because therapists usually, the generalization here, but I still believe it to be true, that we don't like selling. And I am so grateful, Casey, I think it's Casey, that you brought up the word selling, because we need to get more comfortable with it, because we're not selling cigarettes. What we're doing is helping people feel better, and we need to be comfortable talking about the value that we provide. So whether you're talking, working with a patient who has an ailment or, enjoys a sport, and you want to see more of those people, let them know, hey, how can I help more people like you? I'm happy to have a conversation, like be there and show that you want to help, and don't be fearful of that. So whether it's communicating with a referral source or with a patient or word of mouth, Like, realize that, get comfortable and authentic, because what you're doing is really good work and people will trust you, but you do need to feel comfortable talking about it. Find a mentor, set key objectives and goals, like what do you want to accomplish? That'll help you feel accountable, so you can actually reach the goals that you want to do, rather than just thinking, I want to do this. And you know, and you'll go really good places. So excited for your question, Casey. Thank you.
And then we'll go to Josh, and then I've got a couple more questions as well.
Casey, if you can think of sales as not a 4-letter word that's five letters, but storytelling. Sales is storytelling. And then if you pair that with marketing, marketing is market relationships. So if you have storytelling done within relationships that you have in the market that you're looking to serve, you're going to be in a situation where you're able to make your stories known to a lot of people who are potentially patients of yours. If you've never thought about your ideal client, otherwise known as your avatar, that's a good place for you to have a little bit more of that entrepreneurial mindset, where you break out, these are the type of diagnosis maybe that I like to see. These are the patient populations that I like to see, and go value out. Get outside of the clinic, go do workshops, involve yourself at events, authentically engage with individuals in that area, and you'll start to attract individuals that then are looking out for your services when they're actually paying customers. But you have to value out without an expectation first, in my opinion. That's going to allow you to have net new. And then what I want you to think of next is I want you to think of the word retention. You can do all you want to get net new and individuals who are your ideal patients, but if they get on your schedule and you have them churn out and you lead to a higher churn rate at your clinic, you're not going to be very busy. So it's going to be tough for people to see that you have the potential to carry a busier caseload. Then ideally, you're taking care of the individuals that are coming to you to seek you out for services. And then at the end, you're going to do what's called an ask. You're going to ask for an introduction to somebody in their network. You're going to ideally put yourself in that community, in that patient population that you're looking to serve more. And this is where you're going to directly ask for word of mouth, instead of a situation where a lot of people are waiting for passive word of mouth. But if you took care of all 3 of those, I guarantee that you would have a busier caseload in the clinic that you're at, and you'd ideally set yourself up to be viewed as somebody who could potentially help open a new clinic or step into a new role. But if you have net new, and if you have a certain amount of retention and not high churn, and you have the ability to ask to continue to generate business for yourself at that clinic, it's going to be hard for somebody not to put you in the driver's seat for the kind of opportunity you're looking for.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. I think another question, shifting gears a little bit. Once someone's made it to a clinic director role, how do each of you think about trying to help them prioritize their time between, developing the talent on their team, treating patients, and, all the other biz dev and other things that go into being a clinic director?
It's a really hard question, because I think how you set your structure up of your organization and what does success look like and what are the roles and responsibilities for that clinic director, because it is about figuring out how to prioritize the best use of your time. And for us at Highbar Physical Therapy, our clinic director's primary job is to support the success of all the folks within that clinic. And that can change week to week. If you've got a brand new clinic and that person needs to do more business development, that's what they need to be able to do. But if there are times they've got 2 new clinicians in there who need some mentoring, yeah, you need to be nimble and adjust. But I do think having a mentor or an experienced person who's been in that role before or understands how to support that the best use of your time is a question that every one of our clinic directors continuously brings up. But really clear measures of what success is and of roles and responsibilities. What does your site coordinator or your practice coordinator or your other PTs do? Like, get very clear on who's responsible for what aspects, but it comes back to the clinic director's accountability. Got off track there a little bit. There's a way you can think called a RACI, and if anyone's ever looked up RACI or knows what that means, It helps to understand on a team, and I think it's really helpful in organizations to understand you have a team, but yet someone's truly accountable for what happens. Yet other folks may be responsible for all different elements. Other people might be consulted and other people give input. So it helps to give clearly defined roles and responsibilities when you're coming together as a team, rather than just saying, hey, I got to manage everything.
And I think within those structured roles and goals of a clinic director, whatever they may be, there's a little bit of an ebb and flow. Like if ebb is, we've got a high volume, or we've got, we're down a person, or you really need to hire, you might have to shift some of those hours towards patient care, because that's what supports the team. That shows that you're leading from the front, versus we've got somebody new and onboarding. I got to spend some extra time with them to make sure that they're off to a really comfortable start. Or it might be, we've got this new person, I got to go out. I've got this long list of contacts I haven't touched base with. I want to introduce the new therapist, and a flow. So it's a bit of an ebb and a flow. You never want to be completely ebbing. You never want to be completely flowing. As long as you know what your roles and goals are, you just have to make sure you understand that you can't just constantly ignore one part of it just because that's what's right in front of you. You have to be able to pick your head up and look around to see ahead, not just in the day that you're in right now.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we started to kind of pivot into another topic or talking point that I think will be, insightful is obviously all three of your companies have gone far along this journey of building out this, upward mobility and growth paths. But if you can think back to like when you started building these out, what were some of the things you tried early on, maybe that worked or didn't work well, or how did you even think about like, okay, we want to grow our business and create growth opportunities. Here's some of the things we're going to try and some of the strategies that, helped you get to where you are today.
I think, at Team, what was nice is, each little clinic was our own little company. And, what we learned is by, we had a clinical mentor, somebody who's kind of a few steps ahead of the road on you to kind of help you out and be that, outside voice to help. But what was nice is you wanted to bring in the best people who were motivated to take care of people. And then you wanted to make sure that you celebrated all of those little things, and that, there's trial and error, whether some clinics like to do, a weekly get together and talk about things in a huddle, or a monthly extended meeting where they're together, or even set a target and have it be their outing or event for the year. The trial and error is gotta be about constant conversations with your staff about what they want. And some people might not value time outside of the clinic together. They want to balance what's going on elsewhere and have work. So then you need to shift your priorities and do those events during the day, and take a little break, because any any time out of the clinic that you miss like that is going to be rewarded to you 10 times if that's what's most valuable to your staff. So as long as you're listening to your staff or your state or your company and acknowledging the feedback that they give you, you're going to have your best chance for success, whether that's a third-party anonymous once a year top workplace survey like Team Rehab believes in, or the yearly feedback that each employee in the clinic, like Josh said, gives their clinic director and their leadership team. We have to recognize that feedback and build from it from there. I mean, we trip up, but if the feedback tells us we own it and just have to move on. You have to listen to that feedback constantly, so you're keeping up with the culture and the people in your clinic.
I'll jump in here too and say that I think it's really important, especially if you're a leader or business owner here, is remember you are running a business. And again, lots of PTs are like, I'm a clinician as well. We're really good at being clinicians, but we don't tend to be very good at business. However, it's really important that if you do have specific objectives or goals, you do need to treat it like a business. And if you don't have business training, like, use one of the resources out there. One of my favorites is Traction, that lots of folks use. Or you could use the leaders. I'm looking at all my leadership books. I think I've read every one. Or your leadership operating system. And from that, make sure you've got clarity, like what is your purpose? What is your mission? Your purpose will drive the right behaviors. Get really clear about what success looks like. What are your strategies? I mean, for us, one of the things that's super important is igniting people's potential. That's something we've always been about. And so what are the things we're putting in place to ensure that we are igniting people's potential, which drives many of the things Nick mentioned? And how are we measuring that we're being successful in that? And yes, your best places to work and your surveys and your retention are all great ways to actually hold yourself as a business leader accountable in your responsibility to actually have a business where you're employing people and you want to make sure that they've got a good, secure, and safe place to work. So I do think it's important to stand back and don't just think, oh, let's throw spaghetti against a wall and put all these courses together. And you do need to listen, but you need to stand back and really create a strategic plan. Again, if you don't know how to, there's great books out there that really simplify it so that you will continue to move forward and you won't look back and have regrets like, oh, why did we invest all this money and do this? It doesn't even really align with who we are. So get clear on those things, and that will help to drive your culture and drive the kind of people that are attracted to your organization.
I think just piggybacking on what Michelle was mentioning there, it makes me think of ways that we had misfires early on where we were operating under more of this belief that more was more, and that by doing more, we were going to end up with more, and not being as, lasered in on ROI. When you have a young person, they're in your organization, they're having certain things that they're doing that are discretionary in nature. They want to make sure, we want to make sure that we are allowing them to have some wiggle room to kind of figure things out on their own. But there's nothing worse than having a well-intentioned young professional get in your organization and you're like, sure, go, 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 go. And you let them go and they are high effort with very minimal return. So I think to a certain extent, us using the historical information that we have, providing adequate structure, providing guardrails, so to speak, and really leveraging the experience of individuals within the company so that we make sure that whatever more they're putting into is as efficient and as effective as possible. You don't want to contribute to greater burnout or greater belief that work is not going to lead to things that are coming out in tangible results for that individual. So more is good, but we're really trying to come up with that Goldilocks effect. We want to find the porridge that's just right. We want to find the work that's just right. Obviously, there's certain feedback loops that have to come and play with that. But one of the benefits of a bigger organization should be that track record that allows that individual to come in and say, hey, I want to do X and Y. What can the company do for me? And then you're figuring out where that sweetest porridge is.
Nick, you mentioned earlier the mentor-mentoree relationship. A lot of people, at least coming into our company that are younger, are looking for that. Do you put structure around that relationship?
Yeah, we want, in speaking strictly clinical mentoring, in the clinic, all of our therapists, whether they're new or tenured, have monthly one-on-ones with either one of the leaders in the clinic, whether that's the clinic director or the 2IC, somebody who's really interested in professional development. Whoever suits that role and wants that role and qualified for that role in the clinic, it's there every month. As far as new clinician type mentoring, we have external mentors as well who are therapists at other clinics who just have a passion for teaching, and we provide that external support. Let's say you're a new clinic director and you're just slammed and you don't have time. We have a way to make sure that mentoring takes place. As far as a clinic director, each clinic director has a mentor, somebody who kind of represents the partnership with Team Rehab, but is really a fellow clinic director and colleague who's kind of been there and done that and has excelled at the KPIs, both measurable and unmeasurable, that make them a great clinic director. And that relationship is based mainly around what works for the clinic director. Is it a quick huddle every week for a few minutes and then a quarterly meeting? Is it a 1 month sit down in person and go over whatever that clinic director wants to go? And the key for all of these mentor relationships is this is that mentee's time. That's their time, and we're there to support them and give them the conversation structured around anything they want to. Now, if they don't come with anything that's pressing, we can help find them that. We will help make sure that, the metrics of making their day go smoothly are going well, whether it's documentation time or prediction health scores or NPS or MIP scores, whatever they want to focus on that helps them, deliver the great care, we will do it. But the key is it's their time and we're there for them. And we want to make sure that that's a regular and important touch point.
I think, Nick, you mentioned like a second in charge, and Josh, you mentioned co-leads, and we actually got a question about that. So figure dive down that. But how do you create, let's say there is no new clinic opening next month or next quarter. How do you create those other leadership opportunities or development opportunities for PTs who want to develop? And it sounds like both of you have a strategy, and I'm sure, Michelle, you do as well. So it'd be great to hear some on the co-lead, the second IC, and some of those strategies.
Yeah, the 2IC is our term, and I basically we have a room for people who either want to use being a great therapist as a stepping stone to continue to work in clinical excellence, whether it's run a niche program, kind of like Josh said, or continue to grow down a business path where they'd like to own something. And being a 2IC gives you a little bit more structured responsibility with a little bit more reward. We'll double up your monthly bonus. It definitely, you can buy in at an extra share at the clinic, but you have some duties, whether it's scheduling support staff, handling a little bit of marketing, doing all the communication with workers' comp, or, mentoring all the staff, kind of whatever that clinic director needs. Whether, the clinic I ran, I was blessed with great help. The gentleman who took over had at one point 2ICs who loved to market. So he did all the staff development. And then when they moved on to clinic director roles or other positions, his new 2ICs wanted nothing to do with market, but I wanted everything to do with staff development and day to day. He gave them that and then went back out on the road and market. Having that conversation with your leaders in your clinic helps you as a clinic director dictate the workflow and the workload. So that's where our 2IC comes in for that. But as far as clinic director pathway, that's something that's open to great clinicians who score well on metrics and do well. We have formal training for that, and we have them meet with their mentor or their state VP, the business development VP as well, so they can kind of know exactly what path they need to go. And then as opportunities come up, we share them with the company so that they can understand them.
I'll chip in real quick just on the co-site director roles. That has been something that is newer for us. We are allowing individuals to go into new clinics together. So we're actually increasing the profit sharing pot for those individuals under the belief that we're going to get to profitability quicker. Overall, having two individuals incentivized in that clinic is better than one. That'll be something that we want to do more and more moving forward, because it also allows more people in the company to potentially have opportunities. In situations where individuals are preparing to be a site director, they would be at a mature office, they would be working with that site director, and they would have their allocated time blocks and their roles and responsibilities in more of a job sharing type of role. So their cadence, weekly, monthly, the type of reports or conversations that they're in are going to be just like that site director. And we usually do that in less than a 6 month or less window in preparation for them to eventually open up a new location.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Emma, I see your hands up.
I was just going to say something I've noticed from all three, Nick, Michelle, and Josh. They've said multiple times that being a good clinician and being a good team member is sort of the foundation of these roles. So just remember, if you're a staff therapist listening to this, they're not just going to go out and find you and say, hand you this role or these opportunities. You do want to be the best you can be and do a really great job and make yourself stand out. And if you're have that courage, if you're not at a clinic where they have these established programs, having that courage to stand up and say, hey, there's an area of opportunity. If you need help thinking of those, feel free to reach out to Emily and me and we can help you. I'm sure there's plenty of things we can help you think of. And if you stand up and you have that conversation and it doesn't go the way you want, that's okay. You know, maybe ultimately that clinic just isn't ready to take on something like this and support you for whatever reason. And if that's the case, also reach out to us because we have plenty of clinics we can potentially connect you with that can help you and and give you the opportunities that you're looking for if it's not the clinic you're at now.
I'll add one other point to that as well, is just that we seem to keep focusing on leadership is about being clinic director, which is a key pathway. And I think for us, we've always tried to make sure that wasn't the only choice. Like, people want to have options and choices, and we should celebrate what those are. If you are someone who is like, I want to be a really good staff PT, and then I want to take 3 months off to have a baby and then come back part-time, that's good as well. Like, what we want is motivated and excited clinicians. So depending on where you are in your career, there's no right or wrong. It isn't about putting yourself in a place where I'm only, should only feel successful as I'm a clinic director. Not at all. I think for us also, we've tried to make sure that we have faculty positions because we have a residency program. So we've been able to create other opportunities to leadership that are different to being a clinic director. So there's lots of different pathways out there. And for the individual clinicians out there, figuring out what motivates and excites you, it doesn't have to be being a clinic director. It may be overseeing a special interest group. It may be working part-time and doing a side hustle. All of those are okay, but you've got to find the thing that continues to help you be excited and motivated and not feel like you're being judged if you choose a different pathway as well.
I think that's a great place to wrap up.
Yeah, it's a bummer to have to cut short, but thank you all for joining and doing this today. And thanks for everyone listening.
Thanks for having us, everybody. Michelle, good to see you. Josh, nice to meet you, man. Congrats on your success. Thanks, Mike. Adam.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you.